Jon and his group, consisting of Arya, the Hound, Edmure, Rosalind, Grin, and Ed, looked over the side of their ship to see their destination, the castle of the Nightswatch, Eastwatch by the sea. In the few weeks it took for the group to arrive, many things transpired throughout the realm. Roose Bolton had secured his control in the north, becoming the new warden and taking Winterfell as his own. Walder Frey had taken the Riverlands from the Tullys, and the Ironborn had been pushed from the mainlands of the north as a new alliance was formed. This being a pact between the Boltons, the Freys, and the new lord of the Iron Islands, Victarion Greyjoy, who killed his brother Balon and claimed the title for himself, and thus entering a financial and fruitful alliance that will allow him to rebuild and grow the Ironborn Armada to its greatest heights. Upon entering the castle, Jon noticed the many banners of Stannis, as well as the expansive war camp surrounding the castle. While the others found their rooms to rest from their journey, Jon himself would be summoned by Stannis. Jon would approach the one true king as he stood upon the wall, looking out at the northern wilds. He would also notice the presence of Sir Davos Seaworth and Melisandre standing nearby. Stannis would comment to Jon about how he heard what had happened to his family at the Twins, giving him his condolences and informing Jon that he aimed to head south and take back the north. Jon would then ask what he was doing here, then, at the most northern part of the world, if he wished to go south. Stannis would then acknowledge Davos to speak. Davos would then show Jon a number of letters, the first being the revelation that both Joffrey and Tywin had been murdered, the culprits supposedly being Tyrion Lannister and his sister Sansa. Davos would then inform Jon that Sansa had gone missing, having fled the capital after the murders. Jon, though, would still press why Stannis is at the wall, not attempting to take King's Landing a second time during all the chaos. Stannis would then show Jon the letter from the Night's Watch, detailing the massive wildling army massing to assault the wall. There would then be details of a mutiny at Crasher's Keep and the death of Jeor Mormont. This news would anger Jon, as he had always respected Lord Commander Mormont highly, and saw him as a good father figure he never had. Stannis would then tell Jon that he once thought to save the realm, he needed the Iron Throne, but thanks to his advisor, he realized to sit on the Iron Throne he would need to save the realm. That's why he had come north. Stannis informed Jon that he brought his army to repel the wildlings, and then once they were dealt with, he'd root out the Boltons and end their traitorous house once and for all. With the North united once more, he would then free the Riverlands from the Freys and lastly march on King's Landing. Stannis' speech and charisma was very apparent to Jon. It had been a long while since he had felt the drive to follow someone. Davos would then comment to Jon that apparently, to the Northern Lords, he had been legalized. When Jon responded that he had, Davos would ask if the Northern Lords would follow Stannis if he did. Jon would say that the Northern Lords are strong-willed and are not too fond of Southerners, but more than anything, they never forget. If Stannis means to march on the Boltons, then Jon would definitely join him, and that he was sure there would be plenty of Northerners who would happily join to get back at the Boltons for the wedding. Davos would chime in once more, speaking to Jon, alluding to Jon's betrothal to Alyce Karstark. Jon would confirm that he was set to meet and marry her upon his return to Robb. Stannis would tell Jon he aims to keep that pact, as the Karstark forces are one of the least depleted since the war began, and in order to take the north they would need their force. Stannis would confirm to Jon that word would have spread of his survival, and that some of the northern houses would surely flock under his banner. If he meant to save his home and family, then the time to fight was now, but first and foremost they were to deal with the threat that is right in front of them. Jon would then offer his sword to Stannis and swear allegiance to the one true king. When Stannis would ask why he would pledge himself when his brother was king and he was named heir, Jon would answer that he never once craved power. He may have had dreams of being ruler of Winterfell, but those were just a child's dreams to help with the reality of his life. If Stannis means his words, and has come to aid the North from threats both internal and external, then why not fight for the right side? His father died defending Stannis' claim. His brother died fighting the same traitors that usurped the throne and cast the realm in chaos. In Jon's eyes, Stannis was always his ally. Stannis would smile to Melisandre and Davos and accept Jon's oath of service. Stannis would then let it be known that the bastard Jon Snow is dead. From this day and all days to come, the name of Snow is dead to Jon. He would now bury it. Stannis would then have Davos send ravens to all houses in the north, and the main houses of the realm, that from this day onward, Jon would be named Warden of the North under the crown of Stannis Baratheon, the one true king of Westeros. Stannis would then declare Jon's new name, White Stark, in honor of his heritage, as well as his bastard origin and his companion Ghost. Stannis would then make his way down the wall, telling Jon to ready his companions, as in the morning they set out for Castle Black. Sir Alliser Thorne stood watch over the courtyard of Castle Black, watching both seasoned veterans and new recruits scramble to ready their defenses. Since that battle at the Fist of the First Men, reports continued to flood in that Mance Rayder had been uniting and massing all of the wildling clans under one banner, anywhere from tens of thousands to 100,000 strong. A king beyond the wall. It wasn't unheard of, but it was quite rare, and now alone at the wall with but just some 200 men, Thorne stood as the only defense against this mighty threat. Something must be truly dark if all the clans would unite in a push to march south upon them. The worst news of all came when the report of the mutiny at Craster's Keep came in. Some 20 brothers killed Lord Commander Mormont, Craster, and 8 other brothers. And now they claim the keep as their own, calling it the Crow's Nest. Traitors, all of them. Nothing more he hated than traitors. Before his time on the wall, Thorne was a knight himself, having fought for the beloved Rhaegar Targaryen against Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark, even fighting in the Battle of the Trident. He had spent his life noble and true to his oaths and vows as a knight, and for the last 2 decades of his life he lived amongst murderers, rapists, thieves, and traitors, because he stayed true and honorable, because a traitor killed his prince and king. Lord Mormont took the black because his son was a traitor selling slaves, and then he was stabbed in the back by traitors. Now once more, Thorne was to fight one last battle against an army of wildlings led by a traitor of the Nightswatch. This was his curse, to fight all his life against traitors, and now he knew in his heart that before the battle began he had lost. In the twist of irony, this brought great fortune to those who now served under him, for he was angered and bloodthirsty, a seasoned commander with a strong disdain for those that now came for his throat. He would make sure that for every one brother he lost, he would take 50 of the wildlings with him. The sun was setting, and the time for war was drawing near. He had kept scouts constantly on the lookout, and had learned of a raiding force some 200 strong already making it past the wall. Expecting a rear assault, he stationed recent recruits and former captain of the Gold Cloaks, Janos Slynt, to man the ground defenses of the castle. The recruits would mount the towers, while the sworn brothers would set defenses on the walls. Orthel Yalwick and Bowen Marsh would also mount the rear. As for main defense along the wall, Thorne would order Donald Noyle and a number of smiths to begin maintenance upon the many ballista and catapults, to get them battle ready. A young boy, a new recruit, stood near Thorne. His name was Ollie. His family had recently been killed by the wildlings, and now Thorne watched over him, turning the young lad into his personal squire. With the sun disappearing behind the mountains and horizon, all was going black. And then finally, Thorne could see it. Suddenly, a raging fire a mile wide lit up. This was a signal that the time of war had come. At first they looked like swarms of ants, but Thorne knew better. On the ground, the army of Mance Rayder had come. Thorne scoffed, and when the boy questioned why he responded that way, Thorne would tell the boy that it seemed that the reports seemed to have underestimated the size of Mance's army. Thinns, mammoths, hornfoots, ice river clans, cave people, the white tree clans, and frozen shore people. Hell, even giants walked amongst them. All the free folk had come. Shame, it seemed they would all die by his hands tonight. Wave after wave, the wildlings swarmed, and wave upon wave they fell. Ballista bolts fired upon the mammoths and giants. Barrels, rocks, and even broken clumps of ice were hurled upon their heads. Archers picked off the climbers, and when too many came up, the great scythe would swing down upon them. A whole day of this would go on, as nearly every hour another wave would push. The crows held on strong, but as the day went on, the intensity of retaliation began to slow. Seeing this, Mance would give his signal. Upon nightfall, once more, the attack would commence, and with it, this time Thorne would hear another blow of a horn, only this one being that of the brothers down low. The wildling raiders had come, and began their assault on the castle from the rear. They had waited for the Nightswatch to spend their arrows and bolts, and now was the time. Thorne would order Ollie to man the lift, taking 10 brothers with him as they descended down. As the gate opened, Thorne instantly saw the head of Janos Slynt being devoured by a wildling. "With me!" Thorne would cry out, and a small force would join in the bout in the courtyard. Some 100 Nightswatch brothers and recruits against a force of double that size of wildlings. Castle Black would turn red that night. Thorne would order a shield wall near the lift, while he himself would personally carve his way to unite the brothers in the Great Hall with that of the barracks. His blood boiled with a mighty fury, so much that even the mighty Tormund Giantsbane would stalemate against Thorne as the two battled along the rafters. Thorne's leg, though, would eventually be cut, and he would be forced to flee from the duel, attempting to group back up with his men. However, a mighty horn would blow, and many would turn their focus to the gate of the castle. A wildling would see a mighty white wolf appear from the dark as it clamped on his face. Jon would ride into the castle with Grin and Ed, along with a host of cavalry and infantrymen. The southern support quickly turned the tide of the battle for the castle as the wildlings were pinched between the two groups and slaughtered. Jon himself would kill a thin chieftain. While it would be a hard-fought battle, the outcome was inevitable. Having won the fight, Jon would then turn his focus to check on the battlefield, and he would be met with a wildling girl, bow drawn, and an arrow aimed at him. Yet before she could take the shot, she would be stabbed by Thorne. Jon would never know who that woman was, but quite frankly, it wouldn't even really bother him. Thorne, mildly humbled by the sudden aid of Jon, thought about thanking him, yet he would only report the situation of the battle. Jon would then turn to Grin and tell him that nothing gets through the gate. Nothing. Jon would then see Tormund being taken prisoner by the Nightswatch, Thorne noting he's one of the leaders. Jon looked back at Grin, who nodded, picking up the battle axe and leading a handful of brothers and men into the gate. Jon would then have Ed assist Thorne, while he readied his men once more to leave. Jon would inform Thorne that by tomorrow morning this battle will be over. He was needed elsewhere to ensure that it stays over. Thorne would then notice that Jon and his men carried the banners of Stannis. Thorne would laugh to himself, watching Jon and his cavalry ride out. The bastard of the traitor and the brother of the traitor that put him there on the wall were the ones to save him. They were the ones to heed his call for aid. They had shown their honor that night. Thorne, with the help of Ed, and now the bolstered force of Castle Black, prepared for the next wave. The sun was going to rise soon. Whatever Stannis planned on, Thorne was going to watch above the top of the wall. The morning sun came, and many of the wildlings still within their encampments began to serve their morning rations before their next assault. Yet unfortunately for them, their mild success and great campaign would be crushed here and now. Horns blew from the eastern side of the encampment. Cries rang out as men and women scrambled. Horses could be heard rumbling the earth, the burning heart banners flying in the wind as two divisions formed. Some 1,000 heavily armed cavalry, led by Stannis himself, rode into the trees. They quickly began to rout the wildlings with the sudden shock of their attack. This attack itself performed so well, the routing forces trampled their own tents and fellow troops, causing such a panic nearly a third of the casualties become self-inflicted. Thorne laughs as the brothers cheer, seeing the rout unfold on top of the wall. Stannis himself, wielding Lightbringer, kills a number of foes, carving a path to the center of the encampment, where Mance, seeing all those he wished to save being trampled, would order a surrender. This war was over. With night falling, Carl Tanner and his mutineers would drink their ale as they continued their ravaging of Craster's wives and daughters. In one of the storehouses, Asha would struggle with her binds, along with Rickon, yet Jojen would speak to them, telling them he's already foreseeing what awaits them tonight. Sam questioned whether it was death, as he held on to a beaten gilly who stayed laid on the ground passed out. Jojen would then turn to his sister and Bran, who listened to him carefully. Jojen would simply tell them that tonight reunions will happen, and safety is assured for all of them. They would not die tonight. Outside, Theon steadied his aim and let loose an arrow, killing one of the mutineers. It was his last, but it did not matter. He drew his sword, and with Locke, Shaggy Dog, and Summer by his side, they paced towards the keep. Yet as they drew closer, they stopped to the sudden trotting of hooves. One of the guards would cry out for the others. A host of men rode up to the homestead and engaged the mutineers in battle. This was their chance. Robb and Locke rushed forward, each engaging a mutineer. Summer and Shaggy Dog also began tearing apart the enemy. Theon then noticed the banners of Stannis. As another mutineer charged him, he was suddenly taken by a pure white direwolf. It was Ghost. Theon would look around and saw Jon entering Craster's keep. Jon was here. Did he know they were here? Did he come to save them? As Theon then turned to speak to Locke, he noticed Locke in the distance heading towards the storehouse. Catching up, he noticed Locke trying to take Bran. Theon questioned what he was doing, but Locke cut Theon's chest and kicked him back down. Without hesitation, Theon picked back up his sword and engaged Locke in a duel. It started off strong for Theon, but Locke was a dirty fighter and soon gained the upper hand. The others would cry out to Theon. Asha herself would be able to free herself from her binds and attempt to help Theon, but Locke would stab her with her sword, killing her. Screaming in anger, Locke would order the others back down, only for Gilly to awaken and climb onto Locke's back, biting his neck. Locke, enraged, would throw her down and prepare to kill her, but Sam, seeing her in that position, would thoughtlessly pull himself free of his binds, breaking the wooden post he was attached to, and tackle Locke out of the storehouse, his massive size too much for Locke to stop. Sam would begin punching Locke over and over again, screaming that he would never touch her again. Locke lay bloody and unresponsive, allowing Sam to catch his breath and rush over to the others, freeing them from their binds. Jojen held Bran to Asha's body, while Rickon and Sam checked on Gilly. As for Mira, she grabbed some fabric and placed it on Theon's wound. The battle seemed to be dying down outside, and the group began to move out. They could see Locke awake, but he couldn't move. Sam, in his fit of rage, happened to break Locke's neck, and he was now motionless in the snow. Mira would ask what they should do with him, and Theon would remark that they left him for the wolves. Locke would glance over to see Shaggy Dog, Summer, and Ghost standing above him. Locke cried out as they feasted upon his flesh. Bran would then question if that was Ghost, and Theon would point towards the keep. Everyone would look and see Jon standing before them, his face full of shock as he slowly stepped towards them. He would embrace his brothers, realizing that it was Theon who protected them, would thank him as well. After all this time, he was reunited with his family once more. The following morning, Jon would arrive back at Winterfell with his men, as well as 3 more companions, his brother Rickon, Sam, and Gilly. Waiting for them at Castle Black would be Ed, who would tell Jon that Grenn had passed after killing a giant. Alliser Thorne, Davos Seaworth, and the young Princess Shireen would also be present. When Jon asked about Stannis, Davos would inform him that after the battle, they heard that a host of Northmen were seen near Molestown. He had gone with his own host to meet them. As for his sister Arya and his other companions, they are on their way to Castle Black now, being escorted by Sir Beric Dondarrion. Jon would inform everyone that he'll ride from Molestown now. He would ask that Sir Alliser keep an eye on everyone here at the castle with Ed. Thorne would simply nod. He still struggled with his feelings toward Jon, but after everything that happened, whatever he felt would be buried, and he would move on. Jon would say goodbye to Rickon, who seemed to already be friendly with the princess, as well as Sam and Gilly. He and Davos, along with a group of cavalry, would then ride south to join up with Stannis. The past few days had been non-stop for Jon, but for now he was driven to reclaim his home, driven to protect his family, and driven to avenge the loss. Inside Molestown, Stannis would arrive to see a number of Northern Lords waiting for him. Lords Manderly, Glover, Kerwin, Reed, and Mormont all had arrived with a small contingent. Stannis entered with Melisandre, Edmure, Rosalind, and to the surprise of the other Northern Lords, Alice Karstark and Tormund Giantsbane. Stannis would then speak to the Northern Lords, greeting them upon their arrival, and asking them to sit, so that they may discuss the future of the realm, and most importantly, how they will take back the North from Roose Bolton and his bastard. The war for the North was now set. Hey guys, and that's going to wrap up today for the Jon Snow Part 2 fanfic. It's been a long time coming, and I'm happy to finally get it out and bring it to you guys. As for the story, I did want to put emphasis on a part of it as Sir Alliser Thorne, as without Jon being a part of the Nightswatch, a lot of the things that would make Sir Alliser really dislike or hate Jon, other than the fact that he was Ned's kid, really wouldn't have happened. And therefore, to have like this practically no history between the two of them, and then Jon arrive to assist him in the battle for Castle Black and essentially save him, I think would open up a doorway, at least for some mutual respect between the two. And then I also really wanted to play on the idea, even though it's quick, I still want to play on the idea of, since Jon doesn't stay with the Night's Watch, he doesn't build any relation with any of the wildlings. A lot of that, plot lines and story and relationships just don't happen. And therefore, when it comes to the Battle of Castle Black, Ygritte would still die. And realistically, Jon probably wouldn't care. He does not know who she is. She's just another wildling that he has to fight, and she would try to kill him right then and there. And of course, with Tormund, I do believe Tormund, since he was the one willing to ally himself with both Jon and, to an extent, Stannis, and like trust him and both in like the show and everything, and like the books. I believe there's still a chance he would align himself after the death of Mance Rayder with Stannis anyway. So I decided that I still allow that, and I wanted to wrap up this part of the story with the meeting of the Northern Lords and Stannis as he prepares to march upon Roose, Bolton, and Ramsay, thus setting up like Jon Snow Part 3, which would essentially consist of another version of like the Battle of Ice and then the Battle of Bastards, like Assault on Winterfell and everything like that. And yeah, and then for that basically interlude in the middle where it deals with Theon and Locke, who at this point is like confirmed to be a traitor working for the Boltons, for them to go and try and save Bran and Rickon and the rest of that group from the mutineers beyond the wall. I thought it would pretty much end up the same, like events where Locke would die and everything, but I do like the idea of, because they were there and Theon's helping them and there's that whole battle and fight, Jon would notice them and essentially like help rescue them in the end. And that's why I had it written the way it was, while the others who have these powers and have this plot line, they're still gonna, after Craster's Keep, still like head north because they have stuff that they have to take care of. And for those who, I want to say the other video will be out by the time this one goes out, the whole plot line of Theon and basically protecting the Stark boys all the way up to Beyond the Wall, and the introduction of him teaming up with Locke to go up against the mutineers. Hopefully that video should be out by the time that this one comes out. I've had weird scheduling issues with both my jobs, and one might come out before the other. But essentially, if that part confuses any of you, sorry. This whole thing was recorded beforehand, except for basically this like outro part. But since it was so intertwined with the story, I really couldn't like take it out. But yeah, that is Jon Snow Part 2. Already working on Part 3. It's probably going to be a minute before it comes out. The Theon interlude should also be out by this point. And yeah, I have tons of more videos I can't wait to share with you guys coming soon. But yeah, that will be me. This has been JD with the Writer's Cantina. You guys have a good one.